So I can have my fiber. What? I'm so excited.
That you recently got.
That I recently got, which is exciting for me.
Yeah, I hate you.
Being a nerd and all.
Can't get it at my house. I'm too far in the woods.
You're listening to the Help Me With HIPAA podcast, where HIPAA and humor collide to make learning fun. Your delightful hosts are Donna Grindle and David Sims. Relax. HIPAA help is on the way.
This is Jennifer Baumgartner from Perkins County Health Services in Grant, Nebraska, and you're listening to the Help Me With HIPAA podcast.
Thank you for that intro and welcome to the podcast. My name is David Sims of HIPAA for MSPs and Security First IT, and joining me is Donna Grindle of Cardin. How's it going, Donna?
You know, I'm running pretty hard these days, bro.
Yeah, well, getting into the summertime and everything goes crazy. Lots to do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Perfect
I got
time
things
for
to do,
ransomware.
people to see.
Yeah.
No, yeah. Well, ransomware always seems to ramp up in the summertime. I think it's because everybody's in a hurry, everybody's short-staffed because people on vacation, or they're thinking about something else, or...
Well, it's probably that the criminals need some vacation money. So what better way to get it?
There is that.
Yeah. So in today's episode, we're going to talk about ransomware and kind of dive into a side of it that we've not talked about a lot, which is, should I pay or should I go now? So that's a question we always get a lot, especially when it happens. What do I do? And should I pay? Should I not pay?
To pay or not to pay?
Yeah, exactly. And what happens then you do? And what happens if you don't?
Yeah.
And so we're gonna dive into all that today.
The pros and cons.
Mm-hmm. Sure. But before we do that, where are you going to be coming up?
Well, I got a few things going on that, so many things these days are these seminars and stuff that people are hosting. And, I'm doing some cool stuff along those lines, but I'm doing some webinars, those kind of things. If you want to get invited to something, let me know. There's a bunch of those, but the ones that are public are the format approved HIPAA course. I am going to be their instructor. It's a long story, but I'm going to be the one doing the song and dance. And then that's July 24th, 25th, 31st, and August 1st. It's 4 1-hour sessions. And then the North Georgia chapter of MGMA on August 8th, I'm going up there to do their presentation, say, hey, how you doing? And September the 26th, I'm lined up with the Tennessee Ambulatory Surgical Center Association State Conference in Memphis. I'm going to Memphis, Tennessee. I got it there for you, did. So there is that, and we're also, before we started recording, trying to figure out the boot camp, and we've got people asking us about the boot camp, what we're going to do and how we're going to do it. We're trying to be creative, but, we have to make a living, and we have to figure out dates and places and wow, it's just a lot, David. It's a lot.
You sound like you're overwhelmed.
Sometimes. Feels like it sometimes.
Yeah, it can be. All right. So a reminder to the listeners, make sure that you subscribe to our podcast on Apple Podcast or wherever else you listen to it, and share us out on social media and rate and review. We hadn't had a big rating and review party here lately, so it's about time to ramp that up.
Yeah, we need some of those.
Yep.
Because all of our automation just picks up all of the reviews, and if they're old ones, it looks like nobody likes us anymore.
Yeah. Well, we get a lot of email that's basically reviews.
They're all awesome.
And it's like, okay, great, and we do love it, but nobody else can see it. So take a minute and do the review online somewhere. Do it on Apple, on iTunes or Stitcher or wherever you listen to it.
I guess we could start putting those little clips on the website from time to time as we get them.
Yeah. We get a lot in our inbox. But anyway, if you take a moment and do those online, we greatly appreciate it. It helps everybody else find the podcast and all that good stuff.
There you go.
So before we dive into ransomware, let's hear from our sponsor. The number of medical practices that think they're HIPAA compliant is pretty staggering. Effective privacy and security are an ongoing process, not a checklist. And that's why at Cardin, they don't just assess your situation and leave you with a report, but they work with you all along the way. Call Cardin today at 678-292-5001 or visit them on the web at cardinhq.com. Aren't your patients worth it? Okay, so ransomware is all in the news all the time. And as we record this, it seems that municipalities are really getting pounded here lately.
Oh, yeah. And that's, and it's multiple cases where they're paying.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was Lake City, Florida, tried 7 weeks to not pay and then finally paid. But I think it was like 1.1 million out of 2 cities in Florida just in the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, and there's another one yesterday that got announced in Florida.
Oh, wow. So there you go.
Key Biscayne or something like that. I don't know.
Oh, yeah. That's down near Miami.
Yep. So Florida's getting nailed. And,
and they know that these small, well, they're not small. I mean, all of them, but, go back to Atlanta where everybody was talking about it. Baltimore's still under a lot of pain because of the ransomware attack that hit them.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. It's very, very costly. And, of course, the MSP community, the managed IT service provider community, they're certainly watching a lot of this stuff because they're being attacked, which, has been going on for a little while. And Department of Homeland Security put out stuff, months ago about watching this. But we're seeing things happening where they're getting into these service providers and then finding their way into their client base.
Yeah, there's some pretty cool stuff. And we should post some links to that one where you can watch them.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Very crazy. So just kind of a quick takeaway from the video is that when we talk in our boot camp about ransomware, one thing that people often don't realize is how quickly people can do these things. And so the video actually shows one of these in progress, and it takes like 5 seconds for the guy to actually launch the ransomware and get it out of the system. And so that's how quick it can happen. And when you think about it, when you get the fake Microsoft support, call that either comes to you or you make it, because we see some people calling them, but when you let people in your system, by the time you realize what's happened, it's already too late. As soon as they're in your system, it's so fast what they can do. I had a client tell me years ago something, they let somebody in and then their response to me was, well, they were only in there for 8 minutes. I'm like, dude, that's like 15 lifetimes. Mm-hmm. They've gotten everything in 8 minutes. That's a long time to let somebody in.
That's like that story earlier this year that we followed with the accountant, the saddest notification letter we ever read.
Mm-hmm.
That guy was just pitiful. And it was something like 8 minutes there too. And it's, they were only in for 8 minutes. 5 seconds. That's how long it took. 5 seconds.
Yeah. So it's crazy. But, once that happens and you have ransomware, then you got to figure out what to do.
So the whole point of the discussion today is that you need a plan. You need a plan for when you're hit with ransomware. Hopefully you never use it. But if you make a plan for when you're hit with ransomware, then you'll be prepared for some other things. And we always talk about having an incident response plan, and then you have a playbook for the specific things. So your incident response plan has got the assigned duties and who's doing what and contact information and details along those lines that would go with any kind of thing. And then your playbook has very specific scenario requirements for the things that you need to prepare for. And we all know healthcare is no different really than why they're attacking these cities is they know that A, they need the information available to them all the time. B, they may not be doing what they should be doing from a business continuity disaster recovery. I got to back up.
Yeah.
We'll restore. We've never tried it, but we'll restore kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. I got all kind of stories about stuff like that.
Yeah. So that your plan can't be, we'll call IT. Your plan can't be, we'll call IT and they'll restore. They told us they got it, because it's not just an IT problem. So we're going to get into what you need in a ransomware playbook, as well as the pros and cons to actually making part of your plan. Do we pay?
Mm-hmm.
Because it should be a consideration, because there are pros and cons to doing it. And what you need to know is, where's your line? What line is it that you say, screw it, we're going to pay?
Right.
And we've talked about this in a lot of different ways, but we're going to, by the end of this, we're going to nail down the pros and cons and what we think about actually making the payment. Because a lot of people are like, well, I got insurance, they'll cover the payment. Really? If your insurance is $50,000 and you got a $500,000 ransom, how are you going to do that?
Yeah, not going to happen.
Because, we talked about, back in the back. Well, there we go. That was pretty early on that I got all bumbled. But a couple of months ago, the Ryuk ransomware that was being launched, and how it is raising the bar, and we can see that happening. It is raising the bar. People will pay more.
Oh, yeah.
It used to be a few $100, then it was a couple of $1,000, but as they keep pushing that bar higher and higher, they see people paying, and they read the news, probably more than some of us.
It's like any other business, right? You keep charging more until people stop paying, and then you know where the price point is.
That's right. You got to know what the market will bear. And,
exactly.
They don't know that yet. So first, let's talk about some things that need to be in the playbook.
Mm-hmm.
And this is some of the stuff we do this in the boot camp, where we really focus on this playbook, because it can be used in so many other cases when it comes to malware.
Yep, absolutely.
But big thing, all the staff, the whole staff, everybody needs to know how to stop the spread.
Oh, yeah.
That's the first thing. That's the first thing you want to make sure is in your playbook, that how is the spread stopped, and, how do you isolate everything as much as possible?
Yeah, because this is one area where you really need the individual users to understand that they're empowered to take some action, because if it's, something happens and the person sitting at the computer is like, well, let me call IT, and they can't get somebody on the phone, or they're like, I don't know what this error message is, I'm going to lunch. I mean, they have to be empowered to do some things as quickly as possible to try to contain the situation.
Yeah. I told my computer to shut down. It's not shutting down. I'll leave. It'll do it overnight.
Yeah. Or, I've had clients that have called and, something's going on in my computer, or I've let somebody in, and I'm like, just, snatch the cable out of the wall, or turn it off, or whatever. But it's funny that oftentimes they question that.
Yeah.
And I'm like, dude, seconds count here. Just do it.
Literally, seconds count.
But then it's like, well, I got this thing on my screen I didn't save yet. And I'm like, too bad.
But ideally, from a forensic standpoint, what you would want to do is disconnect from the network, but leave the computer up and running.
Yeah.
Ideally.
Yeah. That's
Option
a harder
number
conversation.
2, shut down the computer.
Yeah. The problem is when you get somebody and you're like, pull it from the network. Well, okay, how do I do that?
Yeah.
I've seen them where they're connected to the wired network and the wireless network. So when you pull the wire out, the wireless just picks up.
Mm-hmm. Or they're on a laptop with a battery and they don't even know how to disconnect.
Yeah, that's true.
So they're clueless how to disconnect, or they've got, I shut down the Wi-Fi, but I'm on a docking station. So it is very, very complicated to make sure that people know exactly how you want them to act. So obviously the ones that are more technical, you can teach them about disconnecting from the network. The ones that are less technical, you tell them to just shut down the machine any way they can. And keep in mind, you can't just say unplug it from the wall, because what if they have a battery backup?
Yeah, not just that, but think of all the rat nest of wires and everything that's under these desks. I mean, they're not going to know what to pull anyway.
I know. There's some things that you see up under there.
You know, I wonder how effective it would be. And of course, it would depend on the operating system version, but just have them, click on airplane mode, because most of operating systems have that. That would be a good, effective strategy.
Yeah, something. But you've got to figure out what works in your environment, and you work with IT, because you don't necessarily understand all the devices you have, but you work with IT and you have training, and you make sure that everybody knows how to stop the spread.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the next thing you want to teach them is take pictures of the screen, document the date and time, write down as much as they can. The more they document, the better things are going to go for everyone. So you want to make them believe that documenting what they know and getting pictures of everything is the best thing in the whole wide world, not covering it up.
Yeah. Just make sure there's not PHI on the screen, or that you do something with the images.
Well, yeah, you got to worry about that. But most of the time, what's on the screen is you got to pay this.
Yeah.
And having a picture of that often helps us identify the strand or the strain of malware that's involved. And that is sometimes half the battle.
Oh, yeah, because there's some, there are some decryptors out there that you can get that, if it happens, then we can easily decrypt it and get your stuff back and all that. You don't have to freak out.
Right. It's way better. You still have to do an investigation. You still have to figure out how it got in there and how it was launched. But you don't have to have the same amount of downtime to recover, because there is a decryptor. Mm-hmm. But we'll talk about the decryptor in a little bit. All staff members need to know what to do once they do pull the plug.
Holler, run around.
I know. And not just like you call this one person and you leave a message, because you don't know. So you want to make sure there's like a phone number that everybody gets triggered. It's a hotline, like a hotline. For us, if people leave a message in the anonymous tip line, it alerts everybody in the company. Everybody gets a text message. Somebody's left a message.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody, then we all coordinate and make sure who's responding, who's handling it.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of stuff you need when these things happen.
Yeah. Yeah. The problem we have with things like that is, just speaking from an IT perspective, is a lot of times people, when something happens and they think it's really critical, oftentimes they'll text me or send me an email because I'm the business owner. And right. I'm like, that's really the worst way to handle it. You would think, okay, I'm texting the highest person on the ladder, so I'm going to get the best response. But that's not how it works, because
you're
best
in
response.
Meetings,
yeah, but there's, we have other things set up that would give you much quicker response. And when you follow those protocols, like for instance, putting in a support ticket, it does alert everybody. Everybody in the company gets that alert, and
right.
and then you're able to get that quick response you're looking for. But people just tend to think, well, if I grab the highest person on the ladder, then I'll get the best response, and oftentimes that is absolutely the opposite of what happens.
Yeah, right. Yeah, don't count on me. No, I'm just kidding. So, and that's another thing is a lot of times they'll call us before they call IT. I'm like, do you have IT working on it? So, but, at least they're taking action. But you want to make sure the entire staff knows how to because seconds matter.
Mm-hmm.
Seconds. And that's what we cannot reiterate enough, is it's literally seconds. And you get to also make sure all your staff members know how to do their work when systems are shut down, because you need to be shutting things down left and right.
Mm-hmm.
If you're lucky, you could contain it to one machine, but in seconds, it's hard to do that.
Yeah. And that's, going back to the IT stuff, one great thing about the equipment we put in is that once you get a hold of a technician, we're able to make all these things happen from a technical level. So we can go in and isolate certain parts of the network and do things like that and much faster than somebody running around trying to do it internally. Right. But there again, you have to get us on the phone and all that. Yeah. So
the person that's sitting there within reasonable time frame can make those get to the technology to do it. That is absolutely essential to making that happen. You also need to know, everybody needs to know how to communicate the situation.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, because you do not want to have a failure to communicate.
Or maybe even over-communicate sometimes.
There is that problem. Because you don't want people going to their patients, the vendors, the media, whoever they happen to be talking to. We were hit by ransomware. We've had a data breach. Mm-hmm. You never use those terms.
Well, we do see that happening with some of the pop-ups that come up. Like, you went to a wrong website or some add-on caused a pop-up to come up, and sometimes they'll make your machine act crazy. And we've had people calling like, I think I got ransomware, and it's nothing more than you just went to a site that popped up some warning or whatever, you were redirected. But if you're calling me and you're telling me you might have ransomware, are you also saying that to where your patients in the waiting room can hear it, your staff can hear it, everybody's panicking?
Exactly. And the more people that say that, the more the people that say that,
Oh yeah, because then, if I'm walking out the door or even in the waiting room and I hear that, I don't know what really happened later on. All I know is I heard somebody say you had a ransomware attack, and I'm going to go home and I'm like, hey, doctor had a ransomware attack while I was sitting in the waiting room.
Yeah. And next thing you know, you got
the media there.
and they're looking at other things, even if you had nothing. And I mean, this is important no matter what the situation is. You don't want your staff using terms like data breach or ransomware or any of those kind of things, because you don't even know yourself what's going on. And until you've done an investigation, and these have reputational, legal, regulatory layers and layers of problems just by the words you use.
Mm-hmm.
So you need to teach them all that it's a computer problem. And everybody will be like, I hate computer problems.
Yeah.
Computer problems, people are just like, they roll their eyes, computer problems. And that's it. But you say ransomware or data breach, a whole different reaction.
Oh, yeah.
So the word is computer problems. Always. No matter what it is, you don't narrow it down. You don't get specific. I'm sorry, we're having computer problems.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's kind of like when you diagnose yourself, right? Somebody will say, well, you're not qualified to do that.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing. You're not qualified to go around telling people what your ailment is inside the computer.
Yeah. And it's, even the tech staff. David wants to teach his people, don't tell the person on the phone it looks like you're under a ransomware attack, because again, you're just spreading it.
Yeah.
So you want them to say, look, there's something going on the network. I need to shut some things down so that we can get our hands around it and let some experts figure out what's going on.
True that.
Yeah. So also your response team needs to know who they're going to contact first to get an insurance claim going. How do you preserve evidence? How do they start an investigation? Of course, that's after the spread has stopped.
Yeah. Stop the bleeding first.
Yeah. But you definitely are going to need to do an investigation when this happens. It's not like, oh, we got a decryptor, we're good.
Yeah. Yeah. And the investigation needs to be done from multiple levels. It's not, okay, let's investigate to see what it was, or, did we really have a breach? It's also an investigation to look at how did it happen, mm-hmm. and how can we prevent it? A lot of times you find out that you don't have the things in place you thought you had.
Yeah. Or one day for 1 hour, we did this and we didn't see that somebody got in. You never know, because they got in and then they closed the hole after the fact. You know? So there's a lot of bad things, but at that point, then you've got to know what systems are involved. And of course, like any other thing, you got to know what are your mission critical systems so that you can do an inventory of those systems and parts of your network first to see what's been hit.
Mm-hmm.
So if you don't know what those are, you also need to know things like, one of the things that I've run into before is the accounting systems were not impacted the same as the patient billing systems were, for example. But because they were similar, then the accounting folks had to stay out of everything too, so that we could make sure that that was the case.
Mm-hmm.
And being able to, have a plan for even your accounting system to be down, because you got to worry about payroll and accounts payable and accounts receivable and all of that kind of stuff.
Right.
So you got to have a plan, and it's your business continuity plan. But from a ransomware perspective, you need to know which apps and data has to be checked off first. Because if you've just got some shared files with some libraries, letters in it, and spreadsheets, and that got encrypted, but everything else is good, it changes the way you approach things.
Mm-hmm.
There you go. So, and then the technical analysis. And that does not mean your MSP knows.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, I mean, this requires people that specialize in digital forensics.
Yeah.
I mean, you wouldn't try to take it on, would you? And you say, oh, yeah, we're good. Keep going.
No, I mean, we outsource it. So, I mean, we're the go-to to get it started for our clients.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, we absolutely would outsource it. It's too specialized. And, I think a lot of people will throw anything technology related all into one lump sum. Like anything I need IT, my IT guy does. And I'm like, no.
Nah.
It's like, it's like a medical, the medical field, you have specialties, and you wouldn't go to, an optometrist when your stomach hurts.
Right. Well, and it's like your family care.
Mm-hmm.
You're the internal medicine folks.
Mm-hmm.
And then, and some MSPs are pediatrics, they deal with smaller companies and some are clinics. But again, you're that front line of care, and then all the specialists sit behind you. You still need the front line of care to manage things, to gather the information, to keep the records,
Mm-hmm.
to, monitor all of that kind of stuff, to do the checkups. That's what, the MSP does. It's the specialist that are going to do the other stuff.
Right.
And keep in mind, you can't just start restoring.
Mm-mm.
No, you got to understand your restore options. How do you do them? How long will it take? All of those kind of things.
Yep.
So granted, this isn't a full list of what's in your playbook, but these are the things you would have to worry about. It's the payment thing that has to be also included, and that's what we need to talk about next.
All right. Well, before we discuss the ransomware payment discussions, let's take a break and hear from a word from our sponsor.
Are you frustrated with your current IT provider? Are you sure you're getting the security and protection you need? Are you putting your patients and your practice at risk? If you're in the Charlotte, North Carolina area, give Security First IT a call to learn more about how they can protect your patients, your practice, and your bottom line. Find them online at securityfirstit.com or call 980-288-5100.
All right, we're back. Ransomware payment considerations. Yeah, this is when we get into the should I pay or should I go?
To pay or not to pay. But there are pros and cons you have to take into account, and you need to think about. I always tell people it's better to think about it now than when you're freaking right on out.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, because then you're not thinking about anything.
Yeah, because you have to realize your hair is on fire, potentially, when you actually have to make these decisions. And that's why, it's one of those things that we always say, if you have an emotional reaction to an email, it's probably phishing.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I can guarantee you when you get hit with ransomware, you will have an emotional reaction. But that's one of the things. They find it very lucrative because, you want to get your data back. You panic.
Yep.
And, that's like the plumbers always say when they're having a party and the toilets quit working, they'll pay anything to the plumber.
Yeah. Well, it's also one of the components of ransomware as well as phishing, but the component is you have to be in a hurry. Like you've got to make a decision quickly. Otherwise, worse things will happen.
Yeah. And their business model takes all of that into account. I mean, the criminal's business model has become very sophisticated.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just, you can get ransomware as a service. We've talked about that where, I just get a bunch of IP addresses or email addresses and put them in the email. And then I buy the ransomware and the management of the payment from somebody else who then takes a cut along the way.
Yeah. They just franchise it.
Yeah. And it's amazing that this is happening out there. And I don't think people really understand that the criminal enterprise from the digital criminal enterprise, it's like we all are living in an environment controlled by the mob when it comes to connecting to the internet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So first, what are the reasons people do make the ransom payments?
All right.
And it gets down to, it becomes a time and money decision. The standard answer from FBI, law enforcement, all the experts is not to pay. But at times they understand you don't have a choice.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially when not only do you lack time to get things back up and running because, most people don't understand what their recovery might look like until it's too late and it's facing them.
Right.
And then they realize, wait a minute, this cheap backup that I had is going to take me how many weeks to recover?
Right. At this point, you start learning the things that you should have planned for.
Exactly.
Most of the people that pay didn't have a plan in the first place. I would like to.
Well, the whole thing about ransomware is that I feel people should shift their focus from ransomware prevention. Now, I didn't say don't do ransomware prevention, but shift your focus from ransomware prevention to ransomware recovery.
Right.
And you're much better off. But I think what people do is the opposite. They're like, oh, I got ransomware, stuff to prevent it. And I have all these other security things that's supposed to keep it from happening and all that. But then they don't even look at, do you have a way to recover from it if it does happen? Because they think all these other things are just going to protect them. So I think this focus has to shift. Yeah.
You must assume that it's going to happen and assume that it will be the worst. Because that way, if it doesn't, great. If it does happen and it's not bad, great. But at least you're prepared, unlike what some of these other folks are.
Right.
And
often what you tell people is you have to prepare for the worst.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I was sat in on a seminar with dark reading that we'll talk about in probably the next episode. But one of the quotes is that the military always says, train like you fight and fight like you train.
Mm-hmm.
We are all involved in a cyber war, and you and I have said that over and over. And we really need to do more to make sure everybody functions that way now. It's unfortunate, but it's true.
Yep.
So when it comes to people making the ransom payments, is that generally, even though they have a plan, their plan may say, we're going to make the payment as long as it's no more than X. And that is because the time constraints to get back up and running, they can't afford, like a hospital.
Right.
If they don't want to risk in a critical access hospital, if they don't want to risk that downtime, that anything less than $1 million, we're going to pay it. But, they might negotiate it. You got to keep in mind that you can negotiate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true.
And you certainly want to make sure that, you've got to do those things. And sometimes the answer is, we have to pay, because the reason that we're attacked is because they know we can't afford even to take the time to do a restore.
Yep.
But then you have the reason that, that's the reason that is like, it's part of your plan. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All the other reasons people pay, it's not part of their plan. It's because they don't have a plan.
You're right. Failure to plan.
Yes. Failing to plan is planning to fail. I think, what is that? Benjamin Franklin?
Yeah. Somebody.
Yeah. Somebody from a long time ago, and it still works today. So lack of a complete backup for restoring the system so they don't have everything on backup.
Mm-hmm.
That happens a lot.
Yep.
They can restore part of it, but not all of it. And then you end up with, do you pay to get that one back, or do you lose it all, and what happens?
Yeah. And this is where we talk about the miscommunication and misunderstanding between IT and its clients, or whether they're internal or external clients. Where we're saying we're backing up data, you have backups, but you're hearing everything on my system's backed up.
Exactly.
And oftentimes that's not the same.
Mm-mm.
Not the same.
So you need to understand what is literally being backed up, every single thing.
Right.
And like you always say, you're not buying backup from me. You're buying a restore.
Right. I don't care if the data is backed up. What I care about is, can I restore the data?
Right.
Which you would be shocked how many IT companies don't focus on that.
Mm-hmm.
They're looking at, how can I get the data backed up? How can I keep the cost low so my margins are high? Or I can't sell backup for X amount of dollars because my clients think it's too expensive, so I'll go to the cheap alternative. And, you don't know what you have until it's time to restore.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a bad time to figure it out.
Yeah, and there's so many horror stories that IT people have from, the classic, what was the programmer's last words? We don't need no stinking backup.
Mm-hmm.
To everybody thought the backup was working, but it hadn't been in months. It seemed to be, but nothing was actually on there, and no one was looking.
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't know if I talked about this in the last podcast, but we recently had a client whose server went down. And because of the types of backups that we were able to spin up a virtual server in less than an hour, and they were back in business. And it took us about 2 weeks to get that server back online. Because of the complexities of what they had, and then they also wanted to go ahead and just upgrade it while this was going on. So for 2 weeks, we had their server completely gone, but they were still in operation because we were able to have them running in a cloud instance of that server. So it's amazing what can be done, but you have to have that conversation where people understand, what does it look like when something happens.
Yeah, that's that whole thing. I don't want to have a server in the data center. I want to have it here myself.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, there's pros and cons to that. And a lot of people are like, I don't want to deal with the cloud because what if my internet goes down? Yeah, how often does your internet go down? That would be my first question.
Yeah, that's not a thing much anymore, really.
Yeah. There's redundancy you can build in that's a no-brainer.
Yeah, because our internet at our office, we have LTE failover. So even if the fiber goes down, which has never happened yet, but even if that goes down, we still have some internet service that's pretty darn good.
Yeah, I'm in a debate right now because they're coming out with so many cool little things that you can get, a router that has a SIM card in it.
Yeah.
That's for home. So I can have my fiber. What? I'm so excited.
That you recently got.
That I recently got, which is exciting for me.
Yeah, I hate you.
Being a nerd and all.
Can't get it in my house. I'm too far in the woods.
So, the best part, too far in the woods. Ding, 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 ding. But the best part is that even, I'm here looking at home of, okay, I've got my gigabit connection fiber, and I'm probably going to have failover even at my house with a 4G router. And, that's what I'm looking at doing. And it's not hugely expensive when you consider what it is that you're doing and what, okay, my entire business now relies on me having the internet.
Mm-hmm.
And I also would then have a third option, which is personal hotspots. So it's doable. If I can do it at my house, you can do it at your business. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. I mean, we have it at
unless you're too far out in the woods.
Yeah. And we have all that at our business, and we're not, I think we're paying a couple $100 a month for all of it. I mean, it's not much. Yeah.
But it is directly related to your location. I will give you that.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And there are people that are in a nice sized town that are in internet dead zones in that town. Krista, who works with us, can explain that. Literally, her neighborhood is in one of those areas where none of the providers seem to overlap and give high speed access. So it's absolute, frustration and nightmare. And then I called taunting that I had fiber. So anyway, there's a million things that you have to consider. But if you haven't considered all of those things, then that's one of the reasons that people end up paying. Is not because they planned to pay. It's because they didn't plan.
Right.
And then it doesn't matter what they charge you.
In case we didn't make the point, make sure you test your backups. Test the recovery. What does it look like?
Yeah.
How long is it going to take?
On it? How long does it take?
Yeah.
You got there's what is it? The
RTO and RPO.
Yeah.
Yep. So just
that thing.
Yeah. So RTO is your recovery time objective. So how much time is it going to take? And then your recovery point objective is how far back can you go? Like, are you able to recover back to 15 minutes ago or 1 day ago or 1 week ago? How far back can you go? We just recently had a prospect we had this conversation with, and they're paying for backup. And I do air quotes when I say that. But, they're able, when we asked, what is your recovery point objective? Of course, they don't know, but they asked their current provider and they said 3 days. I'm like, okay, great. So if something happens Thursday night and you're off Friday and Saturday and Sunday, then by the time you come in Monday morning and realize there's a problem, you don't have backup because you have 3 days.
Yeah, who did that math?
Yeah, not 3 versions, which would have probably covered it, but 3 days. But anyway, it all goes back to have that conversation about what this really looks like in depth. Don't just say I have a backup.
Please do that. And then that's pretty much why people choose to pay. Let's look at the reasons not to pay.
Because I don't want to.
One of the big reasons not to pay is that the ransom payments keep going up.
Yeah, they can.
Yeah, I mean, that's what we talked about. It used to be this, it used to be that. When you see headlines where people are paying $500,000, $600,000, do you think that it's going to keep being cheap?
Mm-mm.
And, it's definitely one of those things that, again, it's what will the market bear? And, as we talked about it. But another big problem with making the ransom payment, I know there are so many people that are shocked by this. Criminals lie.
No. But their thing on the screen said that they were honest people.
I know. I'm an honest hacker. We've seen that before. And yes, for most of them, if this is their long-term business, they're going to do their thing.
Yeah, because they're looking for referrals.
Right. Yeah, but I mean, this is how they're going to make their living. So they do have to, hold up their end of the bargain, so to speak, because, they want to be able to hit you again.
They have some integrity.
Yeah, they do. And sometimes, though, it's criminals just looking for quick money. So you pay them and then, poof, they're gone.
Yeah. This is actually a concept within, people who are kidnapped and there's ransom to be had, that oftentimes the people that are doing that in some of these other countries really are looking for a quick payoff because something's coming up, like the weekend or a house payment or whatever. It's kind of funny. There's a guy that has stories about how he's dealt with this for years with the FBI and how if you wait till the weekend or end of the month or something like that, you get a great deal on getting somebody back, paying the ransom.
Oh, wow. It's true though. And the other thing that can happen is, you got to remember this is worldwide. So the criminal is doing criminal things.
Yeah.
So they could be caught between the time you're hit and they are actually gone and in jail somewhere, but it's all automated.
Mm-hmm.
So it asks for the money, you make the payment, and then they're not there. They're in jail. They're not running their enterprise anymore. They're just gone. Or, so they got busy. Yeah. They're not paying attention. It's not completely out of the question that some other reason than they chose to disappear could happen,
Mm-hmm.
And it happens to all of us. And it's not completely out of the question that you'll pay more than once for the same attack.
Yeah.
Because I just saw somewhere somebody paid and to me, the headline is not the story I want to read. Because the headline said they paid, X amount, $75,000 or whatever it was. But then, and they were asked, once they paid that, they had to pay again. It was buried down in the story. That's the headline.
Mm-hmm.
They paid 75 and then they had to pay more. And, they paid 75, but they weren't done. They paid 75, but didn't get their data. That's what the headline should have been.
Mm-hmm.
Because they encrypt and then they encrypt again. So explain that one, David.
Are you talking about getting hit again?
Well, no, how they make you pay twice for your data.
Well, they'll, obviously if you pay for it one time, they may or may not, they may not even have the right decryption key, right?
Well, they decrypt it, but it doesn't decrypt all your data. It's a different key.
Mm-hmm.
It decrypts things, and then part of what it decrypted was more encrypted stuff that needs a different key.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Or like we found out in a recent fact is that there's something like 60% of the time these things work, which means 40% of the times it fails.
Well, that was on the Ryuk ransomware we talked about earlier. When they first rolled out the new one, sometimes the decryption program doesn't work at all.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of times, 90-something% of the time, they do work. But that's another problem you got to worry about is that they don't even work. It doesn't actually decrypt your data, or it decrypts it, but all it does is decrypt part of it, and then it leaves more encrypted with a new message that now you got to pay me more to get to the rest of your data.
Mm-hmm.
So 2 payments in a single ransom attack. So you pay the first one, they're like, now I'm going to hit you for more.
Yeah.
Now, the first one was $50,000. You pay me $50,000. You run the little decryption, and now it asks for $500,000.
Yeah,
that is.
That's like a proof of life.
Yeah,
just we can do it.
Yeah, and that's one of the things they tell you is that if you're going to pay, you request proof of life before you give them money. So. And the other thing is, depending on your data, there's a lot of variables involved, as it often is in technology. But there are cases where ransomware programs damage your data.
Yeah.
So if you don't have a backup, and then you're going to pay the program that malfunctions either when it's encrypting it or decrypting it, it's still software with programmers. And do you think they care?
No.
Hey, do you think they do quality control?
Yeah.
So no. And so sometimes you recover and the data doesn't look the same. Like some of it can't be recovered. And it just damages it to the point that even if you use the decryption key, you get the decryption program, it doesn't help you. You're still screwed.
Yep.
And then of course you've got now you're a known mark.
Yeah, you're on the good customers list.
Yeah, if you pay, then they know that they got in. They know that you paid, and don't think that they don't keep a list of that.
Oh yeah, and they know what your vulnerabilities are.
Mm-hmm. So the thing that they know is whatever was there, that let them get in and do it before, they either know more about what vulnerabilities you have, or they use the exact same way again because you restored.
Yeah. Or they could even set up a way to get back in later.
Yeah. So that's the next piece, is that they, sometimes there's malware included. So they get in, they load their own malware that's doing something else. And then they encrypt everything so that when you decrypt, it's still got the malware there. You don't even know.
Yeah, well, we're even seeing them use legitimate programs. Once they get in that first time, now they're putting programs on there that are completely legit programs for remote access.
Yeah, so it looks normal, but it's their version of it, so they have access to it.
Yeah, I mean, could you imagine just getting in and just turning RDP on? I mean, it's part of Windows.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, it's just there. And so, there's a long list of reasons not to pay. Because, restoring, then if you're actually able to do a full restore, you're not going to have damaged stuff. You're going to be able to get everything back. You're not going to be on the list of people who pay. You're going to wipe out any malware that they left there, hopefully, unless they've been in for a long time. Unfortunately, many people don't realize that the ransomware attack is the end.
Yeah.
It's not like they came in, did the ransomware and left. It's they've been in there for months. Ransomware is like, see you, bye.
Yeah, I'm done.
And I'm going to make a little bit more money off of you. You have no idea what I've done all this other time. So,
yeah. But let's get to the part everybody really wants to hear, which is, what do we recommend?
We don't know. It's up to you.
Our recommendation is to have a plan.
Yeah. Have a plan so you don't have to pay.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be time consuming to restore or rebuild or whatever, but if you have a plan, it'll be okay. There's a long list of reasons not to pay. So put together your plan, make sure you test your backups, know exactly your RTO and RPO. If you fall under HIPAA, you also have to know you can't just pay, restore, keep going. You have the data breach investigation. Well, and you have to do that in a lot of other cases too. Ransomware is the data breach. You have to do an investigation to determine if a notification is required.
Yep. Yeah, so be mindful of that, especially when you get IT involved, because in all the panic, oftentimes people can come in and just start getting your systems back up and going, which can destroy, that data.
The evidence you need. Mm-hmm. And we talked before about the case where the IT guy cleaned his computer right away, and now they're being accused in court of destroying evidence because that could be the evidence that shows just how much the hacker had to do because the technical tools are built into that computer.
Right.
So, but even if you have a plan and your plan is to pay, then there's some things that you need to keep in mind.
Okay.
That you actually need to plan a payment. So if you're going to consider making a payment, make that part of your plan as well.
Okay.
That's very important. Impotent. Because, one of the things is you want to have an intermediary working with you. So the criminals, they may not know, they'll probably know your IP and all that kind of stuff. But if you have someone else actually making the payment, then it's not connected to you, number one. Number two, you don't have to go through the nightmare of getting your own wallet kept up, Bitcoin wallet or whatever built and putting money in it, because then that's something else you got to worry about securing.
Mm-hmm.
You want to make sure that, it's worthwhile to have somebody else do it, but also keep in mind that news stories just came out where people claim they were recovering for you, but what they were really doing was paying the ransom. And then and then charging you, 3 times the ransom to do the recovery, which, keep in mind in your payment plan that you can negotiate with them, make a lower offer.
Yeah.
And they want the money. So if you agree to pay anything, a lot of times they'll just take it.
A bird in the hands or 2 in the bush.
And we're so glad you're here to add that.
I always wanted to use that.
Now, when you're negotiating, keep in mind that negotiate in digital currency, not dollars, because Bitcoins fluctuate in their value. So if you're negotiating in dollars, and today it would be X number of Bitcoins, but tomorrow it could be way more than that or way less than that, you don't know. So you want to make it clear that or whatever currency they're asking for, but usually it's Bitcoin.
Yep.
You negotiate the number of Bitcoin that you're going to pay. And that's another reason to have somebody that understands it, because you could pay 1/100th of a Bitcoin, and that has value. So you want to make sure that you do that, and then you plan to be prepared to pay more than once, because that's not going to change. It's another reason to negotiate that first payment.
Right.
Because they'll go down on it because they know they're going to hit you with another one, because you're going to be right back there at the table soon. Because they got you once, fooled me once, shame on you.
Yeah.
But anyway, and then because you've paid, like we said, you're going to end up on that their frequent buyer list. And you got to be prepared to quickly invest in closing those loopholes that got you in trouble in the first place.
Yeah.
Which that gives a lot of people, pause right there. They don't do that, which is another reason not to pay, because you're going to have to do that either way.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to have to close the loophole. You're going to have to invest in that.
Yep. All that money you didn't want to spend in IT, in infrastructure, in security.
You're going to spend it all at once instead of a little at a time.
I know.
But you got to be sure that you know that by paying, you still have to invest in figuring out what happened, doing the investigation, and making sure that you close whatever loophole and update your processes to prevent it in the future, because you're going to be attacked again. Also, you got to be prepared to have experts running deep scans on your systems, because remember, you could be decrypting their malware.
Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't matter what you do, you're going to need a plan. Just plan in advance. Even if you plan to pay, you have to have a plan to pay.
Yeah, because even that's not easy.
I know, right? So keep in mind that there are a gracious plenty of these cases in the news, and whether they chose to pay or not, it's very, very different if you have a plan than if you don't. But we say have a plan not to pay, but understand that if you have to pay, you also need to have a plan for that.
Yep. And, just planning in and of itself is not that much good.
I know.
Yeah. So if you plan not to pay, then you need to take the actions so that you don't have to pay.
Yeah. The plan, you actually, you need to have the things in place, not just say, hey, we're not going to pay.
Yep. We have a plan.
There you go.
All right.
That's our plan.
That's our plan for the day, folks. So remember to follow, share us out on social media, rate the podcast, and get the app. We have an app for that. And as always, you can send your questions and ideas to us online or at our website. And remember, for Donna and myself, the HIPAA is not about compliance. It's about patient care.
You've been listening to the Help Me With HIPAA podcast, hosted by Donna Grindle and David Sims. The show created to help you with HIPAA. For more information or to ask us a question, visit our website at helpmewithhipaa.com. Neither Donna Grindle or David Sims are attorneys, and they do not offer binding legal advice concerning regulatory compliance. The information in this podcast should not be relied upon or construed as legal advice in any way. Consult your attorney for legal advice concerning compliance with HIPAA regulations.